Evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 5th of October, 2025. Can you believe we're in October already? Where has this year just gone? It seems to have flown completely by. But we're back again for another Sunday night to get around, have a chat about gardening, and see what happens. Today, we're going to be talking about chutneys. I want to find out some of your favorite chutney recipe. It is the season, of course, for making chutneys. Love them with a nice bit of cheese or in a nice sandwich. Cannot beat it. But before we get into that, let's see if anybody is joining us. Over on Instagram, we got Green Spirit Hydro, the Kentish Gardener, and Autopot Gardener, all joined with the Kentish Gardener say evening. Good evening to you all. Adrian is there saying, hi, Richard and all. Good evening to you. We've got Ballycillian saying, good evening all. Good subject tonight. Need to learn more about it. But join in and we'll try and get a good bit of conversation going on tonight. Gary is there saying, good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. Turbo Streamers there. Good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Jenny is there. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all well and had no damage from Storm Amy. Good evening to you. Same to you. Hope nobody else has had any, or nobody has had any damage from Storm Amy. If you have, let us know in the chat. Hargrave Gas, evening everyone. Hope you've had a great week. Good evening to you. Nathan is there. Evening all. Good evening to you. Kate is saying good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson, evening Richard and the Veg Army. Hope everyone is well and has spent time in the garden or plot. Good evening to you. Hannah Jones saying evening gardeners. Good evening to you. And Digwell is going aloha alhihi na aina hamoha. Good evening, fellow gardeners in Hawaiian. I had a feeling it was Hawaiian. I don't know why. I just had a feeling it was Hawaiian. So, oh, where have we got? Jenny says, Digwell, does that make you our version of Maui or Mui? Mui? And Stuart Jackson says, I just need the cheese. Only made chutney once, didn't turn out very well. Well, this could be the chance, the opportunity to find out what you did wrong. I've got to admit, many years ago, my kitchen was pretty much always, or especially at this time of year, my kitchen was just full of making chutneys to the point that we had jars and jars of the chutney inside our, well, in our shed. We filled up a shed with all these chutneys that we had made, and we just couldn't get around to eating, to the point that wife has said no more chutneys. We made a chutney last week, but we did make quite a few. But I really enjoyed making chutneys, and it's that really sort of sharp sweet flavor that I like, the mix of the vinegar, the sugar with the fruit or whatever ingredients we are making. It makes them all worthwhile. But does anybody out there have a favorite chutney that they make? I have a really lovely apple chutney that I make most years. It's really tasty, really nice. I make it in a slow cooker and it is just beautiful. That's one of the chutneys that I really enjoy making. But I've got many more. Let us know some of your favorite chutneys. Chili Phil saying, evening all. Storm Amy was fun for me and landed on the third attempt at Heathrow yesterday. Ouch. That must have been a bit of a nightmare trying to come in with that. Chili Cake says, hello everyone. Sorry, Richard, I meant to think on my tales from a sauce factory for you. Oh yes, I forgot about that. Yeah. And my fault, I should have reminded everyone as well. It's just been one of those weeks where everything has been busy. What have we got? Turbo Stream says, I spent about 4 minutes on my allotment since last Saturday, so I hope it's okay. Was away when the rain and wind came, so haven't been out of the house in the last 3 days. I don't blame you. It's very rare that I say it's not worth visiting the allotment, but when it's this windy, I do think we have to play it safe sometimes. Although it looks like the wind has tamed down a little bit now. But there are times when you have to sort of say, you know what, the allotment can wait, health and safety and all that jazz. Ballycillian says, allotments were in a mess today. I was lucky, went before the storm and tidied everything away that wind could blow about. Excellent stuff. Jenny says, I made marrow chutney a couple of years ago Absolutely fantastic. Now that's absolutely actually quite interesting because marrow is one of those crops that I very rarely grow now, partly because we don't really eat marrows. We don't really enjoy eating marrows. They're just mush. But in a chutney, that might be a way of using them up. Who knows? That may be something. Turbo Stream says, I once made chutney. It was absolutely amazingly awful, so haven't made it since. Fair enough, fair enough. We'll try and figure out what's gone wrong. Stuart Jackson says, sweet tomato chutney from a supermarket. Sorry, I'm here to learn tonight. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Chili Cake says, my favourite chutneys to make are spiced pear chutney and allotment chutney, everything in, and a good sweet chili sauce. I'm with you on the sweet chili. I mean, it's really lovely. I don't know if you would call this a chutney, but thinking about it, the recipe is a type of chutney. But I mean, it's really nice, sweet chili jam. It is absolutely delicious. It smells lovely. It's the type of jam you can just spread on your toast, and it's got that nice fire going on. It is lovely. Digwell says, too many chutneys to mention, but my latest orangey fig chutney is good. Must be good. The family like it. It's always a good sign. Marrow rum, just laying it down there. Marrow rum. I don't even buy chutney from a shop. I gave up cheese as it blocks my right ear up. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to use chutneys with cheese. They just go well together. They do go well together. Jenny says, oh, Richard, marrow is amazing. Stuffed as an alternative lasagna sheets, chutneys, etc. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right. I just prefer courgettes, I guess. I like figs, just hinting, says, and Anna Jones says, I never made chutney, but I love mango chutney from the shops. Yeah, mango chutney. Absolutely lovely. And Andrew says, evening, Richard, and the Veg Army. So we got quite a collection. Please do keep sharing your favorite chutneys. But let's talk about the basis of how we make a chutney. So the basis really is you generally have the vegetables. Normally starting off with some onions. Obviously, all recipes do vary, but starting off with sweating some onions, and then you pop that into a pan with some vinegar and some brown sugar and a collection of other vegetables, and you cook it all down really, really gently until it becomes this sort of thick mass. And then you pour that into jam jars and you let it cool. It really, really is that easy. It's a lot of time spent making it. Even the preparation takes a lot of time because you've got to chop the onions. You've got to chop the vegetables that you're going to add to it. And usually you want those chopped quite small. You're going to add things like, mention about the sugar, the vinegar to add to these as well. But once it's cooking, one of the things I found is that if you've got a good muslin pan, a good, really heavy steel, heavy bottomed pan, they don't tend to stick to it. You just got to keep an eye on it every now and then, turn the heat right down and give it a stir. And that's all there is to it. That is really all there is to it. Give it a good stir. And once, as I showed you last week, once it is thick enough that you can draw your spoon through that mix and you see the bottom and it doesn't sort of immediately fall back in to fill it up, it slowly falls back in, that's when you know you've got it just right. Digwell says, without advertising, which basically means he is advertising, there are at least 20 chutney videos on my channel. Wink, wink. Again, just goes to show he is advertising. But I've got no problem with it. I've got no problem with it as long as it is related to what we are discussing. Jenny says, I love a chunky piccoli. I tried making piccoli once. It didn't work. That's one I failed, but I probably should try again. The reason it failed with piccalilli is slightly different because you have to salt the vegetable first. You have to add a load of salt to draw out the moisture from it first. And I didn't wash it well enough to get rid of that salt. So I made a really salty piccalilli. But other than that, it was really easy to pull off. Turbo Stream says, I do buy pickle. Oh, similar sort of thing. Chutneys and pickles are similar. What is the difference between a chutney and a pickle, I guess, actually? What is the difference? Evening, Richard and all, says Ian. Good evening to you. And Turbo Stream, Piccalilli, not had that in years. It's nice. I do like Piccalilli. It's one of those I never really ate before I started growing my own, started making my own chutneys. And now I quite enjoy it. I haven't had it for a while though. The Dedge test. Yeah, that's the way to tell if your chutneys are ready. The Dedge test. That's where you just, as I said, you pull your spoon through the mixture along the bottom and you make sure it just doesn't flood back in quickly. You wait till it falls, dredge test, falls in nicely, slowly. What have we got? Chili Phil has already hit us down with a hashtag cook along Piccalilli for next week. So that if you've got a recipe you would like me to cook next week, hashtag cook along Piccalilli or hashtag cook along whatever your recipe suggestion might be. And it'll go into the drawer at the end of the show. But coming back, yeah, we do enjoy chutneys. One of the things that when in my old house, when I had a bit more time is probably the right way to say it. I say that because it feels like I don't have a spare minute anymore. But when I was really spent a lot of time cooking all these chutneys, I was up until quite often the early hours of the morning making these chutneys. And I would just, as I said, gather my vegetables, experiment, and make loads and loads of jars of the stuff. I actually gave them away as Christmas presents, along with jams and things like that, which is, it seems like a good opportunity at this time of year where you might be thinking, well, what can I do to give for Christmas presents for friends? And making a load of jams, making a load of chutneys and other preserves are a good way of making our own Christmas presents. From what we grow on the allotment, Stuart says, don't like Piccalilli, but love a good pickle. What's the difference between a pickle and a chutney? That's a question I'm asking out here. Chili says, I have a few kilograms of ripe tomatoes in front of me. Most are going for pasta sauce, but if anyone has any suggestions, I'm not sure much else in apart from the onions. So I think a tomato chutney might be a good idea. A tomato chutney, perhaps with a bit of chili to add, because I'm sure you guys like chili. A bit of a spiced tomato chutney, is that a thing? What was that? A spicy tomato chutney, something like that. Sound like a good idea. Sorry, my phone's making noises. Digwell says pickles tend to mean preserved whole in vinegar. Chutney is denser and more richly flavored than a pickle, where pieces of fruit or vegetables are cooked for long periods with vinegar and spices. So it's more the spices and the thickness makes the difference. As I said, we learn something every show. Bring out the Branston, indeed. We did that last week. We made our own Branston. We brought it out. I made a big mistake we've discovered with that Branston pickle I made last week. I left the date stones in, so when I chopped it all up, it still had all the dates. The date stones got chopped up. Big mistake. But that brings us up actually on something that I kind of hinted on at the beginning when it comes to making chutneys. One of the key things is preparation, and things like chutneys. Sultanas are quite often used in chutneys as well, but spending a lot of time preparing and getting the vegetables chopped up nice and small is quite a key thing. And what I learned, particularly in the past, where I made the piccalilli, I made the chunks too big, it just doesn't work. So you really do have to spend quite a bit of time chopping them up nice and small. And with the apple chutney, the danger is, of course, if you don't do it right, you chop up the apples and they tend to go brown while you're trying to get everything ready, while you're trying to prepare everything, get everything ready. There is a bit of a hint to drop it or dip it into some lemon juice to stop that oxidization going on. What I like to do is try and get myself to the point that everything else is ready, and then I chop up those apples as soon as they're ready to go into the pan. But there is a lot of time spent, I find, just preparing to make chutneys, and that's the key thing. Like so many things, you've got to spend time preparing for being able to be successful. Chili Kate says, I was at craft fair last weekend. Someone was selling Hessian bags with windows for jars for £1. I bought plenty. That's Christmas sorted. Fantastic, fantastic. That's good to hear. So Branston pickle is really a chutney. That's exactly what I thought, and I was making it last week, actually. Toby Stream says, I was walking in Pembrokeshire on the cliffs last week. Fantastic, fantastic. Be glad you're not there this week, though. Kate says, I love Branston pickle. Hate piccalilli, too strong for me. So piccalilli is actually really easy to make. Said you've got to salt the vegetables, then wash them, pop them into a jar, and then it's like a mix of turmeric and vinegar, if I remember correctly, to make the sauce. So if I remember correctly, that is. Perhaps somebody could share a piccalilli recipe if they have one to hand. Extreme, that's a pickle to be in, then Branston pickle is a chutney. Make a few batches with basil or chili ready for using in the appropriate dish. Talking about pasta sauce. Is the difference sugar? Don't know. Yeah, I'm wondering if that difference between chutneys and pickles does include the sugar. Maybe it does. Actually, that's a key thing. Sugar is actually quite an important ingredient in these chutneys. And the reason it's so important is that's obviously where the flavour, the sweetness comes from. But also, you've got to really use a nice brown sugar for it to be effective. In most recipes, that is. In most. Not all. Most. Ian says nothing like a homemade pickle. Exactly. I do enjoy a nice chutney. As I said, nice lump of cheese, nice chutney. I'm happy with that as my desserts. I do enjoy a nice cheese board. Stuart says, can I use my chilies to make pickle or chutney? Thanks, team. Yeah, you can make it. I'm sure there will be a chili chutney or a chili pickle recipe out there. I tell you what, let's throw it out there. Let's see. Has anybody, we've asked for chutney recipes that include tomatoes or involve tomatoes, but also let's get some chili chutneys, or what else was it Stuart just said? Something else he just said. Let's get some recipes going. Share your recipes. Obviously it's easier said than done. Digger says too long for one post, but my piccalilli is 1 kilogram of washed peeled seasonal vegetables. Select at least 5 or 6 from cauliflower, green beans, cucumbers, courgettes, tomatoes, carrots, squash, calabrese, shallots, peppers, and nasturtium seed pods, 50 grams of salt, 30 grams of corn flour, 10 grams of ground turmeric, 10 grams of English mustard powder, 15 grams of yellow mustard seeds, 1 teaspoon of crushed cumin, 1 teaspoon of crushed coriander seeds, 600 ml of malt vinegar, 150 grams of granulated sugar, and 50 grams of honey. Okay, now chili cake, sweet chili jam. Phil can't eat peppers, so the one I use is tomatoes base. That all goes in the blender, so no chopping. So my sweet chili jam recipe, I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head, but basically I take, I don't think there's onions in it. I take load of chopped up tomatoes, chopped up chilies, chopped up peppers, pot it all in a pan with vinegar and sugar. I bring it to a boil and then turn the heat down and then just let it simmer for about an hour and a half until it literally looks like lava. And then I bottle that. That's how I remember it being. But thinking about it, it does go in a blender as well to speed up the chopping. But yeah, I haven't made that for a while. I do like my sweet chili jam. Must make more of it. I just chucked it all in my chutney, so that's why I was in a pickle. Digwell method: cut vegetables into small bite-sized pieces, place in large bowl and sprinkle with salt. Mix well, cover and leave in a cool place for 24 hours. Rinse with cold water and drain thoroughly. Digwell then says, blend the cauliflower, turmeric, mustard powder, mustard seeds, cumin and coriander with a little vinegar to make a smooth paste. Put the rest of the vinegar into the saucepan with the sugar and honey. I think there'll be more to that. We'll come back to that. Stuart says, thanks, team. I have around 35 chilies. I've frozen some already, and as well as about 40 in a string. I love chilies. It's been a good year for chilies, like so many things. Kate says, in Portugal, we have pickled vegetables as a topping for some dishes. My favourite being parco allegento, or something like a pork, potato and clams dish. finished with some pickled veggies. Best thing ever, pickled veggies. We really do need to bring back some of these recipes, some of these sort of skills that have been lost in time, such as pickling vegetables, pickling food, and making the most of it. Digworth says, bring to a boil, pour a little of the hot vinegar over a blended spice paste, stir well and add to the pan. Bring gently to the boil and simmer for 3 to 4 minutes. Remove the pan from the heat and carefully fold into the vegetables. Pack in warm, sterilised jars and seal immediately. The flavours will develop over the next 4 to 5 weeks, so don't be tempted to open the jars early. No more too awkward to do. Yeah, it isn't easy, is it? Isn't easy. Turbo, I do love a dollop of pickle on the pork pie, but I've given them up, sadly. Yeah. But I do, as I said, I do like my cheese boards with a nice, fresh chutney or pickle that's been, especially if it's homemade. So some of my favourites, as I said, I've done chili jam, which is a really lovely one, an apple chutney, which is really nice. I've made pear chutneys, which is nice, fig chutneys. Trying to think, I've made so many in the past that it was virtually like I constantly had chilies on the go. The trouble was chutneys on the go. The trouble was just using them up. We had too many of them to use up, and that became a bit of a problem because no space. Digwell says, make some into powder or flakes, talking about the chilies. Yeah, dry chilies and chop them up in a food processor into powder or flakes. That's a good one. Ian says, I'm thinking of canning some of my carrots, just cleaning them and bagging them in the fridge, storing and preserving your fruit and veg is something I'm learning about. I think it is something that we all need to learn more about and think more of. I do think that we need to really start remembering some of these skills that people in the past would use all the time before refrigeration. And I think in some ways it may make our food last longer if we did it. Thomas Lewis says, I think I made my chutney in the slow cooker. I often actually do make my apple chutney in the slow cooker. It takes about 8 hours making it in the slow cooker, but it really does work nice. It does really get that slow cooking time going. So yeah, the slow cooker is a good thing to use as well. Chili Cat, is it okay if I open a post on Facebook for recipe sharing? Yeah, go for it. Please do share the recipes. I'm more than happy for it. You're making me hungry. I love pork pies. Great idea, Kate. Yeah, please do. If you don't want to write your recipes down in the show tonight, please do share them in the Facebook group. I know not everybody's on Facebook. I've got to try and figure a way for everybody to work. I used to have the forum on the Facebook, on the website, but it was never used. So I just kind of abandoned it. I might bring the forums back, but I need to be on top of the spam bots a lot, because it was a lot of work having the forum on the website. But that may be a way forward. Digwell says, I have a secret for pickled onions that I have not seen anyone else do. After salting the onions, shallots overnight, do the same again with sugar. It draws out just as much water and mega crunchy onions. Lovely. Stuart says, like, share, subscribe, thumbs up. Just a little reminder. Yeah, please do, everyone. Give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification. So, chutneys, has anybody got any secret methods or ingredients that they like to add to their chutneys? Anybody got anything that they feel would help people who perhaps, like some of you have said tonight, you struggle with making chutneys? Anybody got any tips and tricks on how that can be improved? Nice. I like a good cup of coffee. I've given up my blog. So much like hard work. Yeah, isn't it just? Trouble is, I need a website because of the podcast, so I have to keep it going. And I quite like having a website anyway. That's completely the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk if anybody is interested. A lot of attack from Russian bots at the moment, though, getting a lot of attacks at the moment, which is interesting. Stuart says, topic for another week, storage of vegetables, i.e. salted beans. Yeah, that might be one that we have to discuss. Well, we can carry on that tonight, actually. Let's keep with that topic going. Storage of other vegetables. How are you going to store any of the vegetables that you're harvesting at the moment? Root crops, salted beans. And I'm not talking about fridge or freezers. I want to try and... Fridge or freezers are too easy. Let's try and move away from that and think about other methods of storing or preserving our foods that you might do. What do you do? Digwell says, all I was doing on mine was repeating YouTube videos and recipes. Yeah, I think there's room for it. I do think there's room for it, but that's a conversation for another day. Jenny says, I have a foil-proof system. I get someone else to make them. I love growing, not the cooking. You are lucky. You are lucky. Well, to be fair, Amanda does a lot of cooking in my household these days, but I really do need to do more. I have to admit, I do enjoy cooking. I especially enjoy making these jams, making these chutneys, jams. I mean, love making jams. The first time I ever made a jam, I was amazed just how easy it was to make jam. All I did was took a load of raspberries. These were frozen raspberries. Added, I think it was like 500 grams of raspberries, added 500 grams of sugar, and I brought that to a rolling boil and then poured into jars. It was so easy. I was hooked on making jams. Hooked. I've made red currant jelly before, which was very, very popular. And my dad and Margaret particularly enjoyed my red currant jelly. I've got to make more of those sort of things. If anybody knows how to make jelly, well, so jelly is a pretty easy thing to do. You boil down the fruit, strain off the liquid, and then you use that liquid. You add an equal amount of sugar, and you bring that to a boil. Again, really, really easy to do, but just another good way of trying to make our foods last a little bit longer, our harvests last a bit longer. Stuart says, my dad used to sort his carrots in sand in a box and beetroot. Yep. So this is what I'm sort of thinking of, how we store our carrots, our beetroots in a box of damp sand is perfectly adequate. That's really good for getting them through the winter months. And Dad used to store his carrots and beetroots in sand in boxes. There we go. Same thing. Read twice there. But yeah, that's one way of really storing your root crops. It's just getting a box, nothing complicated about that. Filling it up with sand or putting some sand into it, putting your carrots, your beetroots in that you've just harvested, cut off the foliage, of course, but they store for quite a long time that way because they're sort of acting as if they're in the ground and acting in that really lovely environment. And then keep those boxes, of course, inside a shed or a garage, somewhere cool and dry. And in no time, or when you need your carrots, when you need your beetroot, you just simply fish them out. Gary says, it is a freezer, so you may not like it, but I made a batch of apple and blackberry pies, so we can just get one out and then bake it. Please do share the recipe for that, because that sounds lovely. Absolutely lovely. Don't forget, if you do want me to do a cook-along or a mission, hashtag cook-along, hashtag mission for next week. But this does seem, as we are talking, I'll come back to that in a minute. So Turbo Stream says, I once made a small jar of chia seed jam. I took the fruit and cooked it down and added a teaspoon of chia seeds and added honey to sweeten it to taste. Only kept a few days in the fridge, but did it taste good? I'm guessing it tasted good. Ideal for a small jar for toast. There we go. Right, I'm going to cut away quickly to this week's cook along, which was pumpkin cheesecake.
Hey! Come and cook with me. Make some food with me. Come on, everybody. We're gonna make some food. Let's go.
Okay, so for this week's recipe, you wanted me to make a pumpkin cheesecake. Let's go see how we get on with it. So first things we need to make is the base. So we've got 80 grams of butter, 275 grams of digestive biscuits, which I promise I haven't eaten any when I get them out of the pack. I've got a broken one. And one large egg yolk. Put the lid back on. And we'll get that chopped. So we take all those ground up biscuits and butter and egg into one of these spring loaded pans, dishes, can't remember what you call them right now, but this just makes the base. So I'm using digestives here. Sometimes I use ginger nuts biscuits if I'm feeling fancy. For this, not. And then we just spread it all around. And squash it down. The butter actually isn't mixed up very well, I can admit. I'm not too worried by that. I think that'll sort itself out. Let's try mixing it up a bit more first in hand. Okay, we're just going to blind bake that for about 10 minutes, and then in the meantime we'll carry on with something else. Okay, so here is the filling. It's a bit noisy. We've got 800 grams of cream cheese in here, which I've beaten until it's nice and soft. I've then added pureed pumpkin from that pumpkin I showed you at the beginning. We've added 5 eggs, 200 grams of sugar, brown sugar, and we've also added 50 grams of plain flour, giving it a good mix until it's all combined. Now this is going to go into the mix. Okay, well, we got the cheesecake in the oven. It's then got to cool, so that's going to take a few hours. What we're going to do is see back in the studio just what it looks like in the end and how it tastes. Indeed, as you saw at the end of that, that is what it looked like, and this is a slice of this pumpkin cheesecake. I got to say, I'm really pleased with how it looked once it had been all baked and cooled and everything. Of course, it really depends what it tastes like. That is bloody lovely. Bloody lovely. I'm not quite getting the pumpkin flavour. It's not overpowering. It's just a very subtle hint of pumpkin, but bloody lovely. That's a strong 9 out of 10. Very strong 9 out of 10. Really easy to make as well. Really easy to make. Really easy to make. Digwell says some jams, currants, apples are easy as they have loads of pectin in. Other fruit like pear, peach, need added pectin. Same as strawberries as well. But you can get jam sugar for that very reason. It's got added pectin to help make jams set that are made out of fruit that is very low in pectin. Ian says, I've put my carrots in sand and sadly they rotted. I'm not sure what I did wrong. At work, we had a clamp for carrots they used to use for the fruit and veg farms in the 50s. So if they rotted, it is possible they were either damaged when they went in. You've got to make sure your carrots are completely perfect when they went in, or the sand was too wet. So I'm really enjoying that pumpkin. That's the two possible things. You really want the sand to be just damp, just on the damp side, for it to be effective. But you really always, when you preserve your food, you've got to preserve the best and the freshest for it to be worthwhile. Another cook along for Piccalilli. You have the recipe. That's two votes for Piccalilli. Digwell says, use your hands. Indeed. And Rob says, good evening all. Eventually got done for the day. Lovely to see you. How are you? Amanda says, that looks delicious, Richard. It's making me hungry. It is absolutely lovely. Absolutely lovely. And what's best, it's pumpkin. I've said time and time again that pumpkin for me is a fantastic food source that is often overlooked because we often associate it with things like Halloween for carving, but it tastes absolutely delicious and we really should be using it more in our meals and stuff. Jenny says, looks and sounds amazing, Richard. It really is nice. It really is nice. We've got hope that conversation going on there with Rob as soon as he arrives, of course. Over on Instagram, Turk's Plot has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. So carrying on with these preserves, this conversation on preserving our food. Ian mentioned clamps a little bit earlier. Now, clamps was something that were pretty common before refrigeration was very mainstream, particularly in the sort of farmland. And that's where people would basically store their root vegetables in clamps, which was basically a load of straw and earth. They would basically lay a load of straw on the ground, layer a load of vegetables, cover it over with more straw, layer vegetables, cover it with more straw. You get the idea. And then when it was finished, they would cover it all over in the with earth just to protect it a little bit more. It's a very common way of preserving food for the winter months. Not often done these days, but something, excuse me, perhaps we might have to look at and see. Excuse me, sorry. See if it's just as effective. As I said, I think we're going to have to start thinking of these sort of things moving forward with the way the energy costs and things like that, the way it's going. Rob says it's not my fault. No. Digwell says, I did a pumpkin pie in phyllo pastry. Got a thumbs up from many Americans. Pumpkin pie is lovely, isn't it? Amanda's making pumpkin pie this week for colleagues at work because somebody said they've never had it. And I said we have it every year. So Amanda's going to make it for us especially. Rob says, my dad told me about clamps they used in the 40s. They were very, very common. You've got to remember, refrigeration as we know it probably only really came in the 60s, 70s. Before that, it was quite rare. It's something that we wouldn't go without these days. But before then, it was very, very rare. So clamps, meat lockers and things like that were pretty common back in the day. Again, I think it's worth looking at. I've got this book I might show you next week about Dig for Victory, and it's quite an interesting read. I've only got it today, so I haven't had the chance to use it. Digwell says, I tried using a clamp, but it squashed the veg. Idaho's joined. Hello, sorry I'm late. Not a problem. Lovely to see you. I'm wondering, again, about root cellars and things like that, how we could adapt or start bringing back the root cellar. I guess in England we don't really have cellars, so it's not something we could easily do here. But it's something to think about, isn't it? Something to think about. How can we go back to old school methods of preserving foods? How can we go back to methods of preserving foods that we often overlook? I mean, dehydration is another example. We often dehydrate our chilies, so we can turn them into dried chilies or chili flakes or chili powder. But what else could we do? What else could we dehydrate and preserve in that similar sort of way? We also dehydrate a lot of offal to make treats for Roxy, but fruit leathers as well. That's something I haven't done in a long time. So you would make like you take like some apples and you would turn it into an almost like a sauce, and then you would dehydrate those, and they were like almost like eating sweets. Absolutely lovely. Jenny says, I've seen old Anderson shelters used in root cellars. Yeah, good use of one. I'd love an Anderson shelter in some ways. Digwell says too late. No, Digwell. Turbo Storm says, winters were colder, so a cellar would work better than the mild winters we get now. This is true. Again, another thing I often see in stately homes, and there's a story I'll share with you in a minute on these. They were called ice houses. If anybody's ever heard of an ice house, basically they were found in stately homes, and they were basically a giant hole in the ground that would be filled with vegetables, straw, and ice from a nearby lake when it froze over, and it basically acted as a fridge. There's one in Bognor town centre that I've recently discovered, even though I've probably driven past it many times, right smack bang outside the police station. And what somebody did is they painted Lek on the side of it. Lek, of course, being the famous fridge manufacturer from Bognor, which always makes me laugh when I hear that story. But I'm always fascinated with that way of how people would store foods in the old-fashioned way, using things like that. Quite ingenious. Rob says, I remember our fridge, it was a gas one. It was, camping. If you go camping or camper vans, they often have a gas one. Usually using ammonia on the inside, so they weren't the most safest thing to use, but then what is these days? Dehydrated tomato slices, says Digwell. Yeah, almost like sun-dried tomatoes. I've done dehydrated tomatoes to try and replicate sun-dried tomatoes. I don't know if there's any difference between dehydrating them and drying them in the sun in terms of flavour and stuff. I don't know. Is there any difference? Would anybody notice? Turbo Store says, I'm trying to store beetroot in a bucket of old compost. They keep growing. It's probably too warm still. I would say it is too warm still. It is still rather warm. So to think about. Rob says, we have an old ice house just up the road from us. They're fascinating things. I'm always fascinated with these ice houses. I went in one, was it last weekend or weekend after? The weekend before, we bought some new furniture for our garden, and it was in this sort of reclaim yard, and the guy's warehouse was the old ice house, which was absolutely fascinating. He took us on a tour. I was surprised just how cold it was in there. Digwell says, grind up some dehydrated tomatoes to a fine powder, sprinkle it on just about anything to boost the taste or flavour, like a tomato salt almost. Tomato salt. Digwell says, I store most of my food in my belly. Yeah, but what happens when your belly has burnt all that food up and you have no more? Gotta think about it. Jenny says, real seeds sell a tomato suitable for sun drying in the UK. I'll check that out. Because I always thought the UK, we didn't really have enough sun to really dry them out, because we're a bit lacking sun in the UK, so in some ways. Digwell says Freon wasn't safe either. If it burns, it produces phosgene and hydrochloric acid gases. Yeah, Freon's not safe, and the hydrocarbons we're using these days aren't safe either. But that's the list goes on. The list does go on. The first ever refrigerant was ether, which also isn't safe. So the list will go on. How did they make ice then? Quite simply, they waited for the winter and the ponds and the lakes would freeze, and they would just move that ice from there up to use in the ice house. That's how they did it. Just waiting for that. It's quite ingenious, really. There was also like Apple Jacks, I think it was called, Apple Jacks, where they would have barrels of like an apple cider, and every day they would remove the water that from the top layer of ice, sorry, that froze, and that basically made this apple cider stronger in terms of alcohol by removing the water. Was that whiskey or something like that? Similar sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah. Didn't they add salt to ice in small barrels to make ice cream? So if you added salt to ice, that would change the freezing point. They probably, I think what they used to do was a plate on top of the ice, a metal plate, and then they would pour a thin layer of cream on top of that plate to freeze, and then they would turn it over to make the penny licks. I think that's what you're talking about. The salt probably just changed the freezing point so it would melt at a different temperature. Digwa says, have you seen my belly? A kangaroo has nothing on me when it comes to storing things. No comment. I'm going to be polite. Turbo Stream, that'd be no good in summer for my G and T. Jenny, to make it extra cold, not to eat. Yeah, it would make it extra cold. It's all to do with just making the melting point different. Stuart says, with chilies, can you dry them in the bottom of the oven, then flake or powder? Thanks, team. Yes, you can. You can have your oven on a really low heat with the door open to dry them. It's not my preferred way of doing it, but it is a way to do it if you don't have a dehydrator. But on a really, really low heat with the door oven, and just let that heat go. Just let that heat slowly dehydrate and remove that moisture from your chili. So it could be done. It can be done. Digwell says you can also reduce the pressure of salty water to make ice. I heard a story once. This is getting really nerdy and talking about ice and things. Is this actually interesting for anyone, talking about how food and ice was produced in the past? I don't know. I find it interesting, but that's because I'm a nerd. Rob says, I've been told that you can, but oven must be on a very low heat. Yes, you need your oven on a really, really low heat with the door open, so it lets out that humidity and it just gently passes over whatever you're trying to dehydrate. I mean, I cooked a pizza last night and that was dehydrated by the time I removed it. Let's just put it like that. And I didn't have the door open on that. It was, I just left it in there for too long because it was the oven I don't normally use. But these things happen. So Digwell says, in regards to Stuart Jackson's question, what I do is put the chilies, etc., on a tray and place them in the oven after cooking whatever you've just made. Do it 3 or 4 times over a few weeks and you get dried chilies. There you go. There you go. There's an easy way to do it. An easy way to do it. This is one of those things that I love about you guys, sharing your tips and tricks. Now, one of the key things that I think we haven't really mentioned, which I think is very, very, very important when it comes to making chutneys, jams, anything like that, any of our preserves. Cleanliness, keeping everything clean and sterilized jars in particular. So what I always do with my, first of all, I always clean everything completely down before I'm cooking with an antibacterial spray, and just make sure that everything is absolutely clean and safe. Everything's washed before using it and what have you. The other thing is the jars. I like when I use the jam jars. So I do hold on to lots of old jam jars so I can reuse them. I will clean them when I store them away, but then I'll bring them out and give them a good clean again. Ideally in the dishwasher if I have time. If not, just washed up in hot soapy water and then given a good rinse off. I then place those jam jars on a tray in an oven on gas mark 1 for at least 10 minutes, if not longer, just to boil off any water and kill off any bacteria that might be in those jars. At the same time, the lids I will boil on the hob again, just to make sure there are no bacteria in that. And then when it comes to filling up the jam jars, I leave them on that tray that I've put them in the oven on, fill up the jam jars, then I take them off the tray and leave them to cool. The reason I leave them on the tray, it's easier to clean when everything spills over. So little tip from me, leave them on the tray until they are sealed. Jenny says, apple rings left to dry, threaded on a can in a warm, dry place are delicious, soft and chewy. Dehydrated apple rings. That's another thing we could look at doing as well, isn't it? Stuart says, thank you, team. You are welcome. And Digwell says, did you know the person who invented Freon also invented leaded petrol, two of the most polluting and damaging substances ever made? We didn't exactly invent Freon. He discovered it, wasn't it? It's a noble gas, Freon, but refrigerants, CFCs, yes. Yeah, but there's lots and lots and lots of refrigerants in the market. Digwell says, I use new lids every time. Yeah, I'm with you on that, but I still boil them to make sure. Pennies from Amazon, not worth the risk of not sealing the second time round. I am completely with you on that. Completely with you. Jenny says, sorry, that should have been Kane. No idea where my phone was going with that autocorrect. It happens, doesn't it? But yeah, I'm totally with you. Pennies to buy new lids, just so much safer. So much safer. I don't bother. Some people put like a little, particularly on the chutneys, they put like a piece of plastic on top of the chutney to stop the sort of vinegar rusting away at the lids. I don't do that myself. Not interested in doing that. Won't do it because it's just a piece of plastic that is a bit wasteful. The chutneys are not going to rust through my lids. If I use them, sometimes I use the kilner jars, which are just glass lids, and that they're not going to rust through that before I've eaten it. Now, Chili K, I was looking for horseradish recipes and a horseradish vinegar came up. So using fruit, veg, spices and herbs to flavour vinegar. That sounds good. I mean, I love horseradish sauce anyway, which is incredibly easy to make. It's a preserve, isn't it? Basically, you take horseradish, you chop it up, you put it in a jar and you add hot vinegar. That's all there is to it. Horseradish sauce, really, really easy to make. The only thing I would say, grating horseradish is worse than grating onions. It is worse than onions. Digwell says, no, Freon is manufactured CCL2, F2, dichlorofluoromethane, R12. We've got a huge bottle of R12 at work that we've got to get rid of. One of my favourite gases. Really getting nerdy there. Really getting nerdy there. But I'm sure Freon is also a noble gas from memory. My memory of the periodic table, that is. Anyway, getting really, really nerdy here. So I'm going to switch subjects over slightly. If anybody wants to add anything to the chutneys and the preserves, please go ahead. But I want to show you something. I want to show you something that I have very kindly been sent this week. And it's something I'm having a lot of fun looking at. It's from a company called Buster Seed. And basically what it is, we'll take that lid off. It's a propagation tray. So we fill all these up with compost. We can put seeds in them or cuttings, and we can grow our plants. But when we need to get them out, I simply remove like that, pop them out, give these a wash, and we can reuse them, and they go back in. For me, I think these are such a good idea. This particular one also, of course, has a clear lid, like so, as well as a tray it sits in. These, for me, are such a good idea. They feel, these are so well made, they feel like they're going to last a long time. They don't feel flimsy, they don't feel cheap, they don't feel like they're going to fall apart. As you know, I've used root trainers for quite a few years. They're starting to fall apart now. I'm still going to continue using them, of course, but these do feel like they're going to last a lot longer. And I just like how easy they are to use and clean. Not fiddly at all in my eyes. I think, what do you think? Do you think these are a good thing? These Buster Seeds. What do you think? Steve says, I still remember the lemon. Digwell said, Rob says to Digwell, I still remember the lemon curd. What's that? Rob says, got, and they are very messy. Talking about the Buster Seeds, you find them messy. Interesting. Chili Cake says, having been in a horseradish factory, it's definitely much nicer to use a few roots at home. Horseradish factory. What did you make in the horseradish factory? Horseradish sauce, I'm guessing. Yeah. Digwell says, more to it with horseradish sauce. The final heat is all dependent on what you add to the vinegar. After 1 minute, mild. After 5 minutes, ring stinger. Interesting. Wait till you try and fill it with compost. Okay. I've got a few ideas on that. We'll see. Jenny says, would a jar of fruit pie filling be classed as a preserve? My friend makes loads. Oh, mince pie filling. So much brandy in it, it would last forever. My friend made loads of fruit pie filling in jars for easy puddings. They are chunky and uncooked. She also uses them for crumbles, etc. How does that work? How has she filled up these jars with fruit pie filling? How has they preserved? How are they not going off in the jars? Are they going in the freezer or something? Can you share a bit more? I'd love to know. Digwell says, a tip with the Buster, don't leave it in the sun. Mine buckled. Is that so? Interesting. I was quite impressed with them. But two of you have beaten me to the bullet there, but I was quite impressed with them, so I'll be interested to see how it lasts. Chili Cake says, I looked after the factory making horseradish sauce for most of the supermarkets, but had to visit our supplier who grew and peeled and grated it. Oh, so what ingredients did you make your horseradish sauce in the factory with, Chili Cake, then, please? Love to know that. Rob says, I had to put a piece of wood at the end to stop the compost going into the water reservoir. Okay. I did think that, but I think that we come up with a tool or something, a jig type thing to make that easy in time. Digwell, maybe she just pours them into jars for the can and claims all the credit. Interesting. Don't let us cloud your opinion, Richard. Try it for yourself. I will. I'm going to try. I feel like I've missed loads of comments there. What have we missed? What have we missed? Jenny says, I'll have to ask her. I just ate them. Yeah. I'm just wondering about the preserving side of things. I guess it could be like there's a vacuum going on or something like that that preserved it, but I just can't see it myself at the moment. Oh, crikey. What's going on? My comment, get rid of that. Something's going on. Something weird is going on. Chili Cat says it was basically a mayonnaise style sauce. So what? Raw egg, horseradish, and oil type thing. It's only because I've got some horseradish on the allotment that I really want to turn into a horseradish sauce. I'm after some recipe ideas. Digwell, I'm looking forward to lifting some of my wasabi. Claimed to be hotter than horseradish. It is hotter than horseradish. It's not the easiest thing to grow, especially this year, because it does need a lot of water, wasabi, but absolutely wonderful at the same time. Absolutely wonderful. Horseradish mayo is nice. Yeah, that's something we could do. And Chili Kate's going to message me the recipe. Yeah, of course, there's probably trade secrets going on as well. So I should have asked those questions. Right, I think it is time now to go. We've done to this week's mission. Don't forget, if you've got a mission for next week, hit it in the comments with the hashtag mission. Okay, so for this week's mission, you sent me the mission to talk about how to make leaf mould. And it's incredibly, incredibly easy. All you got to do is go and collect some leaves and put them in something like a compost bin. I use this and leave them for a year and they will rot down. That is all it is. That is that easy. Now, a few things that I like to consider. Firstly, where you get your leaves from. If you've got a garden, it's nice and easy if you've got trees in your garden. However, given that leaf mould will reduce down quite a lot, you do need a lot of leaves. So I go to recreation parks, somewhere where the leaf litter is generally just swept up and thrown away. I don't like to get it from anywhere, wooded areas or anywhere like that, because the leaf mould, the leaf fall is going to be good for nature there. So for me, it's somewhere where it's not going to be used. I don't also like getting them from the side of roads just in case of contamination. The other thing to consider is that it does take a long time for leaf to rot down. We're looking a year. You can speed it up by chopping it down, running it through over with a lawnmower, running it through a leaf mulcher. That does help speed things up and could in the long term lead to a better leaf mould, but to be honest, it's a lot more work. Just collect them and throw them in your bin. Easy as that. A compost bin will do, or it's simply anything that you can do. It's very simple, really simple. Nothing hard about it. Collect the leaves, throw in the bin. That's it. Right, is that mission accomplished or mission failed? Back to the studio. Indeed, leaf mould I spoke about on Monday's podcast. Really, really easy to do. There's plenty of leaf fall around at the moment. Highly recommend you go and collect it and store it, turn it into leaf mould. Your garden will thank you for it later on. Really good for seed compost as well, because it's so friable, so soft. It's just a good thing to use. Plus, you can always use the leaves as a mulch as well. Lots and lots of good reasons to store leaf mould. Chili Phil says, I used to create the recipe, so we might just have it hanging around somewhere. Excellent. Talking about that horseradish sauce. Thank you very much. I'd love to hear it. Tab Extreme says, unexpected interlude as my smoke alarm went off. This show must be hot. No obvious fire here, thankfully. It may not be obvious. It's the unobvious ones, but fingers crossed it is safe. Digwa says, my wasabi is the lesser variety. Still needs loads of water. Hataki wasabi grown on land, not sawa wasabi grown in water. Yeah. It's good stuff, though. It is good stuff. I love wasabi. If you can grow your own wasabi, it's good stuff, but it does need a really damp environment. Really damp environment. Probably perfect if you've got a north-facing border. It doesn't get much sun. It's probably perfect to grow in there. Rob says, I contacted the seller and they said they were going to modify them, but with the looks of it, they have not. Fair enough. Jenny says, hashtag mission it needs to be. Sorry, need to do hashtag mission, but make a shelter for wildlife, hedgehog, pile house, bird box, insect. They haven't started looking ready for winter. I've still got the ones that you've asked me to make in the past, Jenny. They're still there on the allotment. So, okay. Turbo Stream says a plastic Dalek bin makes an excellent leaf mold. Just leave the lid off. Yeah, anything like that will do for making for making leaf mold. It's just simply piling leaves up and letting them rot down. There's nothing complicated about it. It is that simple. A Dalek bin will do. Wire bin, a pallet bin, anything like that will do. Stuart Jackson says, thanks for this mission. And Digger says, on the topic of leaf mold, do you know why there is only one layer of coal in the Earth's crust? It's because of millions of years ago, nothing can break down the tree lignin to be continued. We're going to learn something here tonight. Turbo Stu says, was I listening in your podcast who gets free leaves? I listened on my way back from Mars. Yes, you were the one I was thinking of on that. Jenny, hashtag mission, make a wildlife shelter, hedgehog house, bird box, bug snuggle, whatever you need. They are looking for somewhere for the winter. Yeah. We've done that before many times. But we could look at doing another one. Digwell says, hence the coal layer. Then a bacteria evolved that could eat linen and no more coal. Is that so? I did not know that. Isn't that fascinating? Well, it is for me anyway. I did not know that. You always need more. One or for your garden, you can never have too many. Yeah, trouble is I've got them in at home and in the garden. I've not got a huge amount more space. But if it's the mission that wins, it's the mission that wins. So I have to do it. I harvested some condor today. They were rubbish, and some of them was white. A condor type of potatoes. It's been an interesting weekend here, actually. I haven't been able to do much on the allotment or in the kitchen garden because of this wind, which brings me nicely up to this new feature of what has made us happy this week in the garden or in the allotment. Now, this might be a little bit selfish of me to say this, but what has made me happy is the fact that we suffered absolutely no damage from a storm Amy. Now, I apologize if that's rubbing it in the nose of people who have had storm damage, but it's made me very happy that I haven't had any storm damage. What about you? Has anything made you happy? What has put a smile on your face this week in the garden or on the allotment? Let us know. Let us know. Always looking for ideas and things like that. Hey, girl. Moxie's just came in and wanted attention down here. So what has made you happy? What has made you smile? What has been good for you? We got Turbo Stream says, I made a simple cube bin out of UPVC cladding for a leaf mold bin. I need to empty it ready for this year's leaves. You must be due your leaves soon. Is anybody else getting leaves delivered to their allotment by any chance? I don't. I would love them, but we don't get them delivered. I make fruit pie filling, but it is cooked. Then I can can in canning jars in boiling water bath. This is something we need to learn again. Canning, something I want to learn again, certainly. Turbo Stu says, my Pembrokeshire trip made me happy, plus I treat myself to a new hedge trimmer that arrived yesterday. Excellent news indeed. Rob says, best thing to do with your leaves is go over it with a lawnmower first to help break it down. That's one way of making it faster to rot down. I personally don't because it's another level of stuff, but it's one way of making it faster. Ian says sometimes it's worth watering the leaf mold. I find it can get dry in the middle or pot a post in the center, and then when the full of leaves, remove the post to get the air and rain into it. Yeah, that's a good tip. Good tip. But definitely water it. Definitely a lot of water. Idaho says sorry, the filling is not cooked. Okay, that's good. Good. So you can in raw vegetables in order to make a pie filling. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Digwell says, what made me happy was riding my new bike to the plot after losing 11 kilograms of weight. Well done. Well done. Indeed. On both counts. Very well done. Very, very well done there. Try carrying 11 bags of sugar around Tesco's and you'll see how heavy it is. I can imagine. It's a bottle of refrigerant. I mean, that's amazing. That is amazing. Harvesting courgettes, Stuart says, this weekend still going strong. Here's made him happy. Excellent. Jenny says, what made me smile was I found a little stash of seeds and grains that a mouse or similar has been busy collecting and stashing in the garden. Great that I'm not the only one harvesting. Fantastic, fantastic. Digwell says, should have asked me 25 kilo. Oh, same conversation going on. Stuart says, sorry, harvesting made me happy. Good enough, good enough. Andrew says, finding 2 more butternut squashes in the long grass on the edge of my garden, that made me very happy. Excellent. Kate says, well done, Digwell. That's what we've got. Well done on the weight loss, Turbo, says Turbo Stream to Digwell. Absolutely. Well done, Digwell. That is amazing. And Digwell says, thanks all. It is absolutely amazing. That 11 kilos. What's that in stone? It's amazing. That's amazing. How did you do it? What was your secret to losing weight there? Not that I'm fishing. I'm trying to lose weight, so I'm just intrigued. I think everyone is really, really happy for you there. This is interesting, isn't it? Because I've said for many months that I'm trying to lose weight. I'm always trying to lose weight. My trouble is I eat too much. But then I often think, like, how do we define what is a healthy weight? Because we see people, I know this is a really stupid question because we know the answers. What is a healthy weight? But they're tall people who are way heavier than me. I mean, I'm 16 stone now. Last time I jumped on the scales, and I know I'm still overweight. I know I've got a long way to go. I'm more concentrated on losing or making my belly smaller. That's my concentration at the moment. I'm just doing it by eating less. I overeat. But it does make me think sometimes we are, as humans, we tend to eat more food than we should. We tend to overeat because we're hardwired that way. How do we stop that from happening? What do we do? Idaho says I can get a lot of produce. I can a lot of my produce, either boiling water, bath canner, or pressure canner. I have both. You know, Idaho, I would love to see a video on how to can. This is one of those things I'd love to know more. I've tried canning in the past. I just never felt brave enough to feel I pulled it off. So I'd love more on how to can. Digwell says 1 3/4 stone, eating half a plate of food instead of a full plate. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Not going back for seconds, just trying to be conscientious of what I eat and not eating. Not that I ever ate late at night, but not eating late at night either. Nicholas says, sorry, I'm very late. Just got home from a self-build exhibition, looking to build houses on my farm. Good luck. Hope the exhibition was good. Kate says, I've struggled so much to lose weight. Now I'm focusing on getting taller. I'm now focusing on getting taller. It's one way to lose weight, isn't it? To get taller. I'm Yeah, I don't know. I've got to try and lose weight. I wasn't going to read this one out because I thought it was directly to Digwell, but actually, it's a good tip that I did with my wife when she was trying to lose weight. I told her we'd buy smaller plates so that way they look like the plate is full, and it's kind of what they do in restaurants. It's true. It's true. Fasting for at least 12 hours helps his turbo stream. Stop eating 3 hours before bed or skip breakfast if you are a night owl. Yeah, yeah, I can't skip breakfast myself. Most important meal of the day, in my opinion. But yeah, otherwise, I agree. Nicholas says, me too, Richard. Perhaps we could have a week chat Karen as a major topic. What, talking about weight loss? I don't, you want a week? Would that interest anybody, though, talking about weight loss on a show, on a gardening show? Andrew says, if you drink more liquids that fill the stomach, it helps resisting eating too much. I am always drinking coffee. I drink plenty of coffee and fruit juices. Fruit juices probably aren't that good for us either, but I do drink plenty. My liquid intake is more than my food intake. So, yeah, I go for that as well. And no desserts and no added sugars. I'm with you on that. I don't eat desserts really, unless I'm really feeling like pushing the boat out. It could be an interesting topic, this, isn't it? I haven't actually figured out a topic for next week anyway. So, actually, no, I did figure out a topic for next week. I did think about a topic for next week. I was thinking about raised bed or gardening in beds or in the soil sort of thing. Not interested in weight loss chat, too opinionated. That's what I thought as well. Nicholas is canning as a topic. Okay. Well, it's kind of what we're talking about tonight, but that might be something we could look at in the future. Belly Ceiling says, I lost 5 stone, went on a caveman's diet. If you can kill it or grow it, you can eat it. No processed food. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do agree. No processed food. I very rarely eat processed food anyway, so that's easy. Does that include drinking 8 pints of Stella before a big greasy kebab? Drew says, worth trying in reply to that. Indeed, it is worth trying. Right, shall we have a look at some of your photos as well? This seems like a good opportunity to look at your photos. So first of all, let me bring this on the big screen because I can't read it very well. Steve, he has found, wrong one, that one is the one I want, these woolly aphids on his Calabrese. It's a shame because the photo of the other side of these Calabrese, they looked absolutely lovely, like really, really perfect. But then he harvested them, turned them over, and there's all these woolly aphids. How disappointing. Nathan's harvested this collection of sweet and hot peppers. I've got to say, what a big collection, full of colour, full of shapes, full of varieties. Look absolutely stunning. Very, very well done. Excuse me. Steve's plot shot for one for October. Normally I try and limit this to one photo per person, but there wasn't many this week, and Steve put quite a few in. But this is plot shot 1 for October. As you know, I try and encourage everybody to take a photo on the 1st of every month, at the beginning of every month, and then we can see throughout the year how it changes. And this is something I think is a good thing to do, everyone to do. Plot shot 2. I believe this is the second plot that Steve has, but he could perhaps correct me on that. Charlotte has been busy working in her garden. It's been a great therapeutic retreat for her lately with things that she's been going through. She's further south than me as well, so plenty of sun, but I've got to say, what an incredible looking garden. Now, please do keep posting your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group. You can send to me via social media or email me, richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. Let's bring it back over here. But we love seeing your photos. We really do. We want to see more of them. We're not judgmental. Any photo, as long as it's vegetable garden related, we love to see it. What have we got? What have we got? Digwell says, I did try washing them off, but the damages were too bad. Talking about that woolly aphids. Ian says, Andrew, it should be interesting. My wife don't like it. Conversations going on there. Idaho says, I use Ball canning jars and lids. Ball Blue Book for canning recipes. A lot of it is online. Bernadine Company in Canada sells jars, has mostly similar recipes, but using grams, kilograms, liters, etc. Yeah, okay. That might be something when we do discuss canning, that might come into play. What have we got? Right. So Digwell does say it was the second plot, the newer one from late 2024. Looks absolutely amazing. Are they on the same allotment site? Because I always thought they were on different allotment sites. Idaho says, I can sometimes find kilner jars here, but very expensive. They may have a kilner recipe book. I'm pretty sure there will be a kilner recipe book somewhere. They've been going for a long time, so I'm pretty sure they are out there, and they're quite well known, aren't they? We've got quite a few kilner jars in our glass store, but I've yet to make them. We were clearing out our. We had some work done a few weeks ago on the roof of our bakery, as we call it, which is where we tend to keep a lot of this stuff. And we've got 8 demijohns, and I was sort of thinking, do we really need that many demijohns? 8 demijohns is an awful lot. I mean, we don't drink, so we don't really make that many apple ciders or wines or anything. Do we? How many demijohns is too many? How many demijohns is too many? Digwell says, yes, same site, diagonally opposite each other on different levels. Site is on 3 tiers. There you go. There we go. We learned something. Obviously, I get very confused with keeping track of everything. So thank you very much for that. Jenny says, hashtag mission, find ways to safely store garden cane supports, etc. outside storage, as not everyone has a shed. What can we prune to make supports for peas, etc.? Okay, that could be a good mission. The trouble is you've put 2 in now and they both come from you, so you're going to have to choose one. We've got 1 minute, and I'm going to start bringing up or running the draw on hashtag mission and hashtag cook along. So be prepared. I think we've got pick a lily from 2 different people as the cook along, and 2 different missions from the same person for the mission. So yeah, got your eye. Get your thinking caps on, because we will do that draw shortly. In fact, I think it is time we will do the cook along. We'll do the cook along. Where am I? We'll do the cook along. We'll do the cook along now and find out who wins the draw, even though they're both the same. Ready? Let's see who it is. We've got between the 2. The winner is Chili Phil. And if I remember correctly, it was Piccalilli. Piccalilli. So we're going to be making Piccalilli next week, which should be fun. Should be fun. And let's see if I can pull it off. Let's now go to what have we got? What have we got? Jenny says, scrap the first one. Rob says, I store my canes in 6'6" diameter pipes. Good idea. Very good idea, actually. Idaho says, many people over here can food. When I got married, 8 people went together to purchase a pressure canner for a wedding gift for me. Water bath canners are less expensive. Actually, I think I can in my pressure cooker. Thinking about it, I've just very, very rarely use it. So now it is time to go to the mission. And, oh, it's only one drawer, which is, so we're going to do the storage. I think we'll do that. The storage for outdoor storage. So make a note of that, please, Jenny. Digwa says, I knew a lady in Plymouth called Pickled Lily. Pickled Lily. We want to save those jokes for next week. And Ian says, I think bread and sugar plus crisps are my bad food. See, I very rarely eat crisps, very rarely eat sugar, except in jams and things. And bread I've pretty much cut out these days, except for the occasional treat. Turbo Stream says, I saw a video where canes were stored in pallets stood on its side. And Digwell says, is it because USDA do not like vinegar preserving? I don't know. A popular white YouTube channel for canning is Rebel Canners. I kind of understand the principle of canning. I've just never felt brave enough to really do it properly. I guess how would you test if the food is still good that you canned and not going to make you ill? That's the question I have there. Rob says we used to have sugar sandwiches when we were kids. Sugar sandwiches? Is that just sugar on a bread? Stuart says, I know we still have a couple of minutes, but I would like to say a big thank you all for the ideas from tonight's live stream. Not a problem. So next week I want to talk, or my thinking is talking about a bit of a debate about whether or not to have beds for your allotment, for your vegetable garden, or to turn everything over to soil. What are the pros and cons, and what are the thoughts behind it? That's sort of what I want to debate. How does that feel for everyone? What? Obviously, don't start the debate this week. Save it for next week. But does that feel like a good conversation for everyone to get into? Apparently, yeah, sugar on bread was sugar sandwiches. Digwell says, freeze your bread when thawed. It has more of the complex carbs that pass straight through you without impacting blood sugars. I've heard this tip a few times. I used to dip strawberries in sugar as a kid. Oh, rhubarb. Rhubarb was the other thing we used to do that with as well. Stick a rhubarb, dip it in sugar, and then eat it. Digwell, good topic in my honest opinion. Thank you. Ginny's good too. I always freeze bread too. Rob says, well, I was late coming, but really enjoyed the chat again. Thanks, everybody. You're very welcome. But it is time. I think we're going to get out of here. Jenny says, next week sounds good. Thank you for a great show, everyone. Please remember to hit the thumbs up on your way out. Have a great week. Richard, I'll send the notes over. Thank you very much. Banana and sugar sandwich, well lush. I'm used to banana sandwiches. I used to have those. But sugar sandwiches, no, I can't say I have ever eaten them. Anyway, I think it is good time to start packing up and get out of here. It's been, as always, a pleasure chatting to you. We've had a good conversation about everything tonight, it feels like. Interesting to hear people's thoughts on the buster seed, which we're going to try out and see how we get on. And interesting to hear everybody's thoughts on chutneys and things like that. But next week, we are going to have a good discussion on whether to have soil or beds. I don't know how to quite what the wording is going to be, but beds or complete soil. It's going to be a big question. Right, thanks so much, guys. Don't forget to give us a like, a follow, subscribe, and click the notifications so that you know when we go live. But that is it for this week. See you again next Sunday at 6. Bye for now.